As we mentioned earlier in the show, Governor Cuomo has yet to call a special election in New York's 26th congressional district, but that has not stopped potential candidates from fighting for a spot on the ballot. Republicans moved very quickly to unite behind Jane Corwin, but Conservative Party leader Mike Long is waiting until at least the 14th of this month to make a final decision on who his party is going to back. Yesterday, Mr. Long met with my next guest. David Bellavia is an Iraq War veteran. He's seeking the Conservative Party's backing after Republicans passed him up last month. It's good to see you, David. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. So you are really kind of fighting it out there. You tried to run for Chris Lee's seat. You were going to primary him back in the day. That stepped aside, got in line, and now you've been passed over, and you're not happy about it.
Well, you know, again, in 2008 we kind of cut our teeth in this whole process, and it wasn't our time. We thought what was best for the party was going to be best for the district, and again, you know, they found their candidate model, which was, you know, important to them, that they had a self-funding candidate, and you know, unfortunately, the character honor thing wasn't really important at that point, and we got burned by it. Let's be honest, the district got burned by it. And this time, you know, they wanted to go really fast. There was a process that they really wanted to push out there. We still have a lot to add to this dialogue. We still have the ears of the district. Where everywhere we go, we're getting volunteers from all over the place. And, you know, we're going to do what we can to push the issues that are important to me and to make sure that we have a fair shake in this process.
Well, again, I mean, they're going again for that same self-funding model. And Jane Corwin, the Assemblywoman, has some capability of funding. You do not have that capability. Is that correct?
I do not have the, you know, millions of dollars that the opponents do. But you know what? 2010 showed us a model across the country. And it's ironic that the only real candidates that failed in 2010 on the Republican side were the self-funders. But there's an infusion right now of young conservatives across the country. Matter of fact, we just had 8 conservative veterans from across the country fall into congressional seats. All of them had very, you know, tough struggles. This is the only race in the country right now. We've been had the opportunity to get a lot of Americans that not only believe in this nationally but locally. They get their tax returns and they're contributing. And I'm humbled by it and I appreciate it, but I'm empowered by it. And so we are going to go as strong as we can, and when Chairman Long makes his decision, you know, we'll know at that point where we're going.
Well, what will you do? Because I spoke to Chairman Long earlier today, and he actually told me that he thinks that, quote, you're a nice guy, a potentially good candidate, but you have no, quote, institutional support. You have some strong grassroots support and appeal, but that's different from having the endorsement of the Republicans, which Jane Corwin has, the endorsement of the Monroe County Conservatives, which she also has. And he says that he feels that she has a leg up. So if you don't get the conservative line, will you be an independent candidate?
You know, I could only, you know, I can't close the doors that aren't open at this point. And there's other, I mean, let's be honest, we've had conversations with all of the major parties we've spoken to.
Even the Democrats?
We've spoken to all of the major parties. So we've had discussions, and what it really comes down to right now is we're going to focus on the conservatives. I'm a conservative. I've always been a conservative. I feel that, you know, I'm lock and step with the values of most of the individuals of the 26th district. Now, that being said, you know, the Republican Party, it was a hurry-up drill. I mean, there was a lot of people that had their name in that threw their hat in the ring that weren't exactly given that, you know, opportunity to really kind of show how we're different from each other. So the Republican nomination was done really quick. And the Monroe County, they did make their decision. I would have appreciated to have been a part of that, to have been invited to that process, but they made their decision, and I stand by it.
You're actually really a conservative, like bona fide, because you switched your enrollment.
I have.
And why did you decide to do that?
Well, you know, I think that the National Republican Party, where it's at, I think that there's a little bit of a disconnect between where New York State Republicans are as opposed to where the nation is. And when you see the National Republican Party move towards these conservative candidates, veterans in particular, pro-gun, you know, I want to be lock and step with what my core beliefs are. And Chairman Long, you know what's great? No matter what happens with Chairman Long's decision, I like Chairman Long, and I want to work with him. I do in the future, and so I don't care what his decision is. I want to be a part of what Chairman Long is doing.
But the reality is that you didn't feel moved to make this change until you got involved in this process and got kind of dissed by the Republicans. So did that color your decision to change your enrollment?
It absolutely did.
It did.
It absolutely did. And by the way, this is not in an effort to, I made my party affiliation change because of the fact that I don't feel like I belong. It's hard to say I do belong when, the process was pretty much, the door was shut in the face.
But okay, and I understand that. But the reality is that, going hyper-conservative, if you will, even as the rest of the country might be going that way in the Tea Party movement, didn't work so well for Carl Palladino. It worked great in the GOP primary, but in terms of the general, he got his clock cleaned. Now, also, he's abandoned you and is now supporting, even though you were a supporter of his, he's now supporting Jane Corwin. And so in a Democrat-dominated state where Republicans are more moderate, as you just said, than other places in the nation, how can changing your affiliation actually work for you?
Well, I think it's just being honest with myself. It really wasn't it's not a decision that's being made of how to, I guess that's what the problem is in general. And one of the reasons why I want to represent this district, something happens to you when you cross the Potomac or you enter Albany where, truth just becomes subjective. I don't really subscribe to that. I honestly, truly believe that, where we are, if we are truly going to restore our republic, if we're going to bring American pride from Batavia to Buffalo to Baghdad, look, we're talking about issues right now, jobs and the economy. We're about ready to go to war again in Libya. We're seeing the Middle East completely almost topple over, dominated by Islamists. Imagine what's going to happen when OPEC is controlled by Islamic extremists. Now gasoline has gone from $3 a gallon to $5. This is going to affect Western New York. I understand that this is not a one-issue race, and I understand that there's a lot of issues that I wouldn't call myself, by the way, hyper-conservative. I'd say I'm conservative, and 2010 showed us that the country is moving in that red center.
To that end, though, and unfortunately we're almost out of time, but I have to ask you this. You have been trying to color Jane Corwin as not a true conservative, in large part because of her position on abortion. She's been quite clear. She believes abortion should be legal in the first trimester. You believe that is too liberal for the district.
I believe, the point we made about
Chris Lee did have that position, did he not?
Right.
He did.
I don't actually remember back then if he had that same thing. But again, I understand that this isn't a one-issue race, and that it would be great if the only issue of the day that we could talk about was one singular social issue that would define our region. Again, I'm very happy with what we did by putting her, for her telling the truth on what her position is. And it's abundantly clear now. That's set aside. I'd like to talk about some of the other 85 issues that are affecting us. Like, for example, today, the Republicans in the House kicking back another layer of Obamacare. That's important. These are some of the issues that I'd like the opportunity to share with my opponent.
Well, if you run on an independent line, then you might have an opportunity to do that. When you make that decision, we hope to hear from you, unless, of course, you get the conservative line. We will see. In the meantime, unfortunately, we are out of time. But David Bellavia, thank you very much for coming in. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.